My name is Chloe. I'm 35, and for 8 years, I truly believed I was building a perfect life with my husband, David. I poured every ounce of myself into being the best possible wife and stepmother to his son, Leo. I filled our house with warmth. I showed up to every single soccer game, and I dedicated myself to forging the loving family I thought we all deserved. But all of it shattered in a single night when David chose to believe the vicious lies of his son over a truth he had to have known deep in his gut. 21 days later, when he finally called to ask if I'd had enough time to reflect on my behavior, he was clearly expecting a tearful apology. What he got instead were divorce papers. Before I walk you through how I went from a devoted wife to serving legal documents in just under a month, do me a favor and let me know where you're watching from. And please hit that subscribe button if you've ever had someone you love believe a lie about you. David and I first crossed paths at a major public relations summit in Denver about 9 years ago. I was leading a workshop on crisis communication, and he was in the front row, asking the most brilliant and challenging questions. There was an undeniable magnetism to his confidence, and I loved the way his eyes crinkled up at the corners when he smiled. After my session, he found me, business card in hand, and a sharp compliment about my PR philosophy turned into a coffee meeting, which then bled into dinner, and before I knew it, I was swept up in a romance that felt like something out of a movie. David was divorced and had a preteen son, Leo, who was 12 when we met. I understood from the beginning that dating a single dad meant his child was an integral part of the deal, and honestly, I was excited by the prospect of being a positive force in Leo's life. During those first few months of dating, David was very cautious about introducing me to Leo. He wanted to be certain that his son was ready for the idea of him being in a new relationship. Our first meeting was at a casual burger joint that Leo adored. I remember being so on edge that I must have changed my clothes at least 3 times. Finally deciding on a simple pair of jeans and a green sweater David had once mentioned brought out my eyes. Leo was reserved during that first encounter, mostly giving one-word answers to my questions and constantly glancing at his father as if for a silent confirmation. After about 6 months, David proposed during a romantic weekend trip to the mountains. We had a beautiful wedding with just over 100 guests. Leo stood beside his dad as the best man, and in his short speech, he made a polite remark about being happy to welcome me to the family. It brought tears to my eyes, filling me with so much hope for the future we were about to build. Moving into David's house was a significant adjustment for all of us. It was a lovely home in a great neighborhood, but it felt sterile, lacking a certain warmth. It had been well maintained since his divorce, but it didn't feel lived in. With David's enthusiastic blessing, I took on the project of redecorating, creating spaces that felt like they belonged to all 3 of us. I was careful with Leo's room, though. I made it clear that it was his sanctuary and only offered to help if he wanted to make any changes. Those first years were fueled by genuine optimism. I knew blending a family would come with its own set of hurdles, but I was fully committed to making it work. Leo was on the cusp of his teenage years, and I anticipated some natural pushback against a new figure of authority in his life. I made a consistent, conscious effort to build a bond with him, never trying to step on the toes of his mother, who lived several states away and only saw him during summer vacations and a few holidays. I went to all his soccer games, cheering my heart out from the sidelines and gradually learning the intricacies of a sport I'd never paid attention to before. I learned to cook his favorite meals, taking mental notes of his preferences, his dislikes, and the one brand of ketchup he insisted on. When he was struggling with his physics homework, I would spend hours at the kitchen table with him, patiently working through complex problems and drawing on my own academic background. And there were moments, real moments, when I felt like we were finally connecting. The occasional family movie night where Leo would actually put his phone away and watch the entire film with us. That one surprising Saturday when he asked for my help on a school project about public image, acknowledging my professional expertise. The Christmas he seemed genuinely thrilled with the high-end drone I'd spent weeks researching to make sure it was the exact model he wanted. David saw my efforts and was deeply appreciative. He would often pull me close after Leo went to bed and thank me for being so patient and loving with his son. Those moments were my fuel. They were validation that what I was doing mattered and was being seen. My close friend from work, Maya, became my confidant during this time. As a stepmother herself, she understood the tightrope walk of building a relationship with a child who might always see you as an outsider. Over countless lunch breaks, she offered advice and sometimes gentle warnings about teenage manipulation, which, I admit, I often brushed aside. I was convinced that Leo and I were slowly but surely building something real. Our house became a place I was immensely proud of. I transformed the living room with a huge, comfortable sectional sofa and warm, ambient lighting that encouraged us to gather and talk. The kitchen became my haven, filled with gadgets and always smelling of something delicious baking in the oven. The backyard, once just a plain patch of grass, now had a beautiful stone patio where we hosted summer barbecues for our friends and family. David's parents, Carol and George, had initially welcomed me warmly. Carol would often remark how wonderful it was to see her son so happy again, and George seemed to appreciate the stable, warm home I had created for his grandson. Family gatherings were always pleasant, and I felt like I was slowly but surely earning my place in their lives. As the years passed, I started dreaming of growing our family. David and I had talked about having children of our own, but we'd agreed to wait until Leo was a bit older and our family dynamic felt more settled. I pictured a little brother or sister for Leo, hoping a new baby might finally cement us as a single, unified family unit. There were, of course, fleeting moments that gave me pause. An occasional cold stare from Leo when he thought his father wasn't looking, or a dismissive, under-the-breath comment about something I'd cooked or said. But I chalked it all up to typical teenage moodiness, never anything significant enough to confront directly. I convinced myself these were just minor bumps in the road. I truly believed that with enough love, enough patience, Leo would eventually come around and fully accept me. I threw myself into the role of the perfect wife and stepmother with everything I had, absolutely certain that my genuine care and affection would eventually conquer any lingering resentment. Looking back now, I see I was so fixated on creating this picture-perfect family that I was completely blind to the warning signs flashing all around me, the subtle hints that just beneath the surface, a storm was brewing that would eventually erupt into a betrayal that would change my life forever. The shift in Leo's behavior was so gradual, so insidious, that at first I didn't even really notice it. As he started his senior year of high school at 18, I just attributed his growing distance to the normal pressures and distractions of being a teenager. But soon, the pattern became undeniable. Family dinners, which had always been a non-negotiable part of our daily routine, were now frequently marked by Leo's empty chair and a last-minute text message about a late study session or some extracurricular activity. One evening, after Leo had bailed on dinner 3 nights in a row, I made his absolute favorite shepherd's pie, specifically to tempt him to come home. When he texted saying he was staying over at a friend's house to work on a project, I felt a sharp, distinct pang of rejection. David just shrugged it off. "That's senior year for you," he said. "The big projects always seem to happen at someone else's house." I started noticing other things too, troubling things. Walking past Leo's room, I'd overhear him on the phone with his friends, his voice instantly dropping to a whisper if he sensed I was nearby. Once, I clearly heard him say, "She's always hovering," followed by a dramatic eye roll when he saw me standing in the hallway. Then, small things started to go missing around the house. A silver necklace I usually kept on my dresser simply vanished. $50 disappeared from my wallet when I could have sworn I'd just taken $100 out of the ATM. When I brought these things up with David, he would suggest that I was just being forgetful or had misplaced them. One Saturday afternoon, I decided I had to talk to David about my growing concerns over Leo's behavior. We were sitting on the patio having coffee, a rare, quiet moment alone. "I'm worried about Leo," I began carefully, stirring my drink. "Have you noticed how he's never home anymore? And when he is, he barely says a word to me." David let out a heavy sigh, leaning back in his chair. "Chloe, he's 18. Teenagers need their own space. They don't want to hang out with their parents all the time." "It feels like it's more than that," I persisted. "It feels like he's deliberately avoiding me. Not you, just me." "You're overthinking it," David dismissed with a wave of his hand. "He's just being a teenager. I was exactly the same at his age." I let it go, but a deep sense of unease lingered, a constant low-frequency hum in the background of our lives. Around this time, Leo's grades started to slip. When I got a notification from the school's parent portal about his failing physics grade, I tried to approach him with an offer to help. I found him in his room, headphones on, completely lost in a video game. "Leo?" I said, after knocking and getting a grudging mumble to come in. "I saw the alert about your physics grade. I was pretty good at science. Would you like some help studying for your next exam?" He ripped off his headphones, his face immediately hostile. "Did you seriously go checking my grades behind my back?" "I didn't check them behind your back," I explained as calmly as I could. "Your dad and I both get the school's notifications automatically. I just thought I could help." "I don't need your help," he snapped, his voice rising. "And I definitely don't need you spying on me and then running to my dad about it. Leo, that's not what I'm doing. I care about your future, and you're not my mother." He cut me off, his face flushing with anger. "So stop trying to act like you are." The outburst left me stunned and deeply hurt. I retreated from his room, fighting back tears, wondering where this intense hostility was coming from. When I told David about it later, he again downplayed it. "He's under a ton of pressure with college applications coming up," David explained. He didn't mean it personally, but it had felt incredibly personal. It felt like a deliberate and forceful rejection of my role in his life after years of trying to build a real connection. The situation escalated when I accidentally saw some disturbing texts on Leo's phone. He had left it on the kitchen counter while he went to take a shower, and it kept buzzing. It wasn't my intention to snoop, but the constant notifications made me concerned. I glanced at the screen and saw a string of messages from someone named Tyler, discussing a party where they were planning to bring vodka and what sounded like prescription pills. This discovery put me in an impossible position. I knew David needed to be aware of his son's dangerous behavior, but I also knew that if I handled this the wrong way, it could completely destroy my already fragile relationship with Leo. After a lot of thought, I decided to talk to David about implementing more structure in Leo's life without mentioning the texts specifically. I didn't want to betray Leo's privacy if I didn't have to, hoping that a more general approach with firmer boundaries might address the problem. That conversation was a disaster. David became instantly defensive. "Are you saying I'm not parenting my son correctly?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Not at all," I backpedaled, shocked by his reaction. "I just think that teenagers sometimes need clear rules, especially when they're making choices that could impact their future." "What choices, exactly?" David pressed. "Just general teenage stuff," I said vaguely, not wanting to reveal what I'd seen without knowing how he'd react. "I've been raising Leo for 18 years, David said coldly. "I think I know what he needs better than someone who's only been in his life for a fraction of that time." The conversation ended there, with a thick tension hanging in the air. As I turned to leave the room, I caught a glimpse of Leo standing in the hallway. A quick, satisfied smirk crossed his face before he smoothed his features into a neutral expression. It was just for a second, but it was unmistakable. A chill went down my spine as I realized he had been listening, and he was pleased by the conflict he had just witnessed. Around this time, Leo started dating a girl named Jessica, who seemed to take an instant dislike to me. Whenever she came over for dinner, she would be warm and chatty with David, but would give me only curt, one-word answers. I once overheard her telling Leo, "I don't know how you put up with her being around all the time," when she thought I was out of earshot. My own home started to feel less and less like my own. I felt like an intruder, constantly walking on eggshells to avoid triggering Leo's anger or causing another fight with David. The beautiful home I had so lovingly created now felt like a battleground where I was hopelessly outnumbered. And yet, despite all of it, I kept telling myself this was just a phase. I had invested so much of my heart into this family that I couldn't just give up. So I kept trying, holding on to the hope that with enough patience, things would get better. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come, and that my place in this family was far more fragile than I could have ever imagined. My 35th birthday should have been a happy celebration. I had made reservations weeks in advance at a lovely French bistro downtown, excited to have a special evening with David and Leo. The morning of my birthday, I came downstairs to find David making my favorite breakfast, French toast with fresh raspberries and a beautiful bouquet of tulips on the table. "Happy birthday, my love," he said, giving me a tender kiss. "I've got our reservations for 7 tonight." "Where's Leo?" I asked, noticing his absence. David's smile faltered slightly. He texted. Said he forgot about a study group for a huge exam tomorrow. He's really sorry he can't make breakfast. I swallowed my disappointment. But he'll be at dinner, right? I made those reservations 3 weeks ago. David hesitated, placing a plate of French toast in front of me. "Actually, that's something we need to talk about. Leo mentioned last night that his friend Tyler is having people over to work on their senior thesis project. It's a huge part of their final grade, and..." "On my birthday?" I interrupted, unable to hide the hurt in my voice. "He knew about this dinner. We talked about it last weekend." "I know, and he feels terrible," David said, though I seriously doubted that. "But this project is really important. So you're just letting him skip my birthday dinner for a project he supposedly just found out about?" I asked, my appetite completely gone. "Chloe, try to understand. Senior year is critical for his future. I can't force him to miss something that big." In that moment, I felt completely invisible. My one special day, so easily cast aside for what was almost certainly another one of Leo's lies. But I just nodded silently as David apologized again and promised he would make it up to me. That evening at the restaurant, the empty chair across from us felt like a monument to my foolish belief that we were a real family. David tried to overcompensate by being extra attentive, but the message had been sent loud and clear. When a choice had to be made, Leo would always come first, and I was a distant optional second. On the drive home, I finally let my feelings out. "David, I feel like a complete outsider in my own family. Today made that crystal clear." "That's not fair," he said defensively. "It was just bad timing with his project." "It's not just today," I said, my voice trembling. "It's a pattern. Leo consistently pushes me away, and you consistently let him. We argued for hours that night, going around in circles as David defended his son, and I tried desperately to make him see the hurtful dynamic that had taken root in our home. We eventually fell into an exhausted truce with half-hearted apologies, but something had fundamentally broken. That argument had exposed a deep fault line in our marriage, one that would only grow wider. After my birthday, Leo became even bolder in his disrespect. I started to notice David looking at me differently sometimes, a flicker of doubt in his eyes where there had once been only trust. I soon found out why. Leo had been feeding him a steady diet of subtle lies when I wasn't around, suggesting I was a different person when David wasn't home. "She gets really angry sometimes, Dad," I overheard him saying one evening when they thought I was still out on a run. "I don't want to cause any trouble, but..." He trailed off as I walked into the room, and he and David exchanged a look that made my stomach clench with anxiety. The incident started piling up. My work laptop, an expensive model I needed for presentations, was found with water damage one afternoon. Leo claimed he had no idea what happened, even though it had been perfectly fine when I left it on my desk that morning, and he was the only one home, supposedly sick from school. After the laptop incident, David started questioning me more directly about my interactions with Leo. He said you yelled at him yesterday about his laundry, he said one evening, his tone trying to be casual, but his eyes were watchful. That never happened, I said, shocked by the blatant fabrication. I was in meetings all day yesterday. I barely even saw him. David just nodded, but I could tell he wasn't entirely convinced. He seemed pretty upset about it. David, I'm telling you, that absolutely did not happen. Leo is lying to you. His expression hardened. That's a very serious accusation, Chloe. Why would my son lie about something like that? I had no answer that wouldn't sound like I was just attacking Leo, so I retreated, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. Our home, my sanctuary, became a place of constant tension. I started feeling anxious doing simple things like cleaning or laundry, afraid that Leo would somehow twist my actions into a new story to tell his father. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. My friend Maya noticed the change immediately during our lunches. You look exhausted, she said one day, her eyes filled with concern. Is everything okay at home? I just broke down, telling her everything. Leo's escalating lies, David's growing suspicion, my profound isolation. Maya listened patiently, her expression growing more and more grave. Chloe, this is classic alienation, she said finally. He is systematically turning your husband against you. You guys need professional help, family counseling. Buoyed by her support, I cautiously suggested counseling to David that night. I think we could all benefit from talking to someone. There are some communication issues here. His reaction was swift and absolute. We do not need a stranger telling us how to be a family. This is just a rough patch. David, it's more than a rough patch, I insisted. I feel like I'm being pushed out of my own home. Now you're just being dramatic, he said dismissively. Leo is just going through some stuff and you're taking it all too personally. The rejection of counseling felt like another door slamming shut. Things took an even darker turn when I discovered my personal documents had been gone through in our home office. My passport was out of place and financial statements were shuffled. When I checked my personal bank account, I found that $600 was missing from a recent transfer. Besides me, only David had access to that account for emergencies. When I asked him about it, his confusion seemed real, but he offered no solutions. Maybe you moved it and forgot, he suggested. You've been under a lot of stress. The gaslighting was constant, making me question my own sanity. Was I really forgetting things? Was I overreacting? The questions ate away at my confidence. Around this same time, I noticed David's parents, Carol and George, had become noticeably cool toward me. Carol, who used to include me in every conversation, now directed most of her attention to David and Leo, treating me like a polite acquaintance. After they left one Sunday, I asked David if he'd noticed. He just shrugged. They're just worried about Leo. He told them you've been pretty hard on him lately. What? I exclaimed. That's completely untrue. What exactly did he tell them? Just that you criticize him a lot and make him feel unwelcome in his own home, David said, as if it were a reasonable complaint. They're his grandparents, Chloe. Of course they're going to be protective. The realization that Leo was spreading these lies beyond our front door hit me like a punch to the gut. The careful, loving image I had built with David's family was being systematically destroyed by a teenager with an agenda I couldn't understand. My isolation was nearly complete. My support system had been dismantled piece by piece. What I didn't realize was that all of this was just the prelude to a catastrophic event, a carefully laid trap that would shatter the life I had built. And I was walking right into it, completely unprepared for the betrayal that was waiting just around the corner. The business trip to Seattle was scheduled for 3 days, but my client meetings wrapped up early, allowing me to catch an afternoon flight home a day ahead of schedule. I didn't tell David about the change in plans, thinking it would be a nice surprise. Looking back, I wish I had sent a text, given some kind of warning. Maybe things would have been different, but I didn't. And that one small decision changed the entire course of my life. The house looked perfectly normal from the outside when my cab pulled up around 6 in the evening. But as I walked toward the front door, I could hear music pulsing from inside, far louder than David would ever allow. I used my key and walked into what looked like a scene from a teen party movie. Leo and at least a dozen other teenagers were sprawled across our furniture. The coffee table was covered in liquor bottles, some half empty, and the distinct cloying smell of marijuana hung heavy in the air. Plastic cups and snack bags were everywhere, and someone had spilled a dark red liquid all over the new cream-colored rug I'd bought just 2 months prior. For a moment, nobody even saw me. I just stood in the entryway, completely stunned. Then a girl spotted me and nudged Leo. His eyes went wide with alarm when he saw me. The music kept blaring as he staggered to his feet, clearly intoxicated. "What is going on here?" I asked, my voice cutting through the noise. "Where is your father?" Leo fumbled with his phone, turning the music down with a remote app. "He's at a work dinner," he slurred. "He won't be home till late." I scanned the scene again, my eyes cataloging the underage drinking and drug use happening in my home. Taking a deep breath, I spoke with as much authority as I could. "Everyone who doesn't live here needs to leave. Right now," I said firmly. "The party is over." There were a few groans, but when I walked over and shut the music off completely, the kids started gathering their things. Leo just stood there, his expression shifting from shock to a dark, simmering anger as his friends filed out. Once the last one was gone, I turned to Leo. "What were you thinking? There was alcohol and drugs in our house with minors. Do you have any idea how serious this is?" "It's not a big deal," he muttered, swaying a little. "Everyone does it." "It is absolutely a big deal," I shot back, starting to collect the empty bottles. "This is illegal, Leo. You and your friends could get into serious trouble, not to mention the damage to our home. Just leave it," he snapped, suddenly hostile. "I'll clean it up before Dad gets home. He doesn't need to know. I am not going to lie to your father," I said, continuing to gather the evidence. "He needs to know what happened here." And that's when his entire demeanor changed. The sullen teenager vanished, replaced by someone cold and calculating. He pulled out his phone and turned away from me, his voice low and urgent as he made a call. "Dad," I heard him say, his voice suddenly choked with fake tears. "You need to come home, now!" "Chloe is freaking out. She shoved me. Dad, I don't know what to do." I froze, the bottle in my hand almost slipping from my grasp. "Leo," I gasped, "that is a complete and utter lie." He ignored me, continuing his masterful performance for David. "I'm scared. Please, just come home," he pleaded, then hung up. "Why would you say that?" I demanded, my heart pounding as the reality of what he'd just done washed over me. "Your father is going to believe I assaulted you." "That never happened." Leo's eyes met mine, and the pure coldness I saw there sent a shiver down my spine. For the first time, I saw the true, deliberate malice that had been driving him for months. This wasn't just teenage rebellion. This was calculated destruction. "It's your word against mine," he said with a chilling shrug. "And Dad always believes me." I tried calling David immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent frantic texts trying to explain what had really happened, but they went unanswered. The 20 minutes it took for David to get home were the longest of my life. I watched in horror as Leo methodically built his case against me. He messed up his hair, rumpled his shirt, and splashed water on his face to simulate tears. Most disturbingly, he went over to the sharp edge of the doorframe and repeatedly pressed his arm against it, creating an angry red mark that would surely bruise, manufacturing physical evidence for his lie. When David burst through the door, his face was a mask of fury and concern. He went straight to Leo, who launched into an Oscar-worthy performance. "She just lost it, Dad," Leo sobbed, showing him the developing red mark on his arm. "I just had a few friends over and she started screaming and throwing things. When I tried to calm her down, she grabbed me and shoved me against the wall. That is absolutely not what happened, I interjected, my voice shaking with disbelief. David, he had a full-blown party here with alcohol and drugs. I sent his friends home and was cleaning up when he called you with this insane lie. David looked at the mess, then back at his son. Is this true? You had alcohol here? For a split second, I thought reason might win. But Leo was ready. It was just a couple of beers someone brought. I was about to ask them to leave when Chloe came home and just exploded, he said, his voice dripping with convincing regret. She's always hated me, Dad. She was just looking for an excuse. That is not true, I said desperately. David, you know me. You know I would never, ever hurt Leo. Please, you have to believe me. David looked back and forth between us, his expression torn. Then his gaze settled on the reddening mark on Leo's arm, and I saw the decision form in his eyes before he even spoke. Pack a bag, Chloe, he said, his voice quiet and cold as ice. I want you out of this house tonight. The words hit me like a physical blow. David, please, I begged. This is all a lie. Leo is manipulating you. I saw the bruise forming with my own eyes, David said, his voice rising. My son is terrified of you right now. I need you to leave until we can figure this out. Where am I supposed to go? I asked, tears finally breaking free. Call a friend. Get a hotel. I don't care, he said coldly. I just need you out of this house and away from my son. David, this is my home too, I protested weakly. This was my house before you moved in, he reminded me harshly, and I never thought you would be capable of hurting my son. I guess we were both wrong about a few things. I looked over at Leo, who was standing just behind his father. I caught a flash of pure triumph in his eyes before he quickly rearranged his face back into the mask of a victim. In that instant, I understood just how completely I had been outplayed. With no other choice, I went upstairs to pack a bag, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the zipper on my suitcase. Through my tears, I called Maya, who immediately offered her spare room without a single question. Walking back downstairs with my luggage was one of the most humiliating moments of my entire life. David stood with his arms crossed, watching me in silence. I never thought you would choose to believe such an obvious lie, I said quietly, meeting his eyes one last time. 8 years together, and this is all it takes for you to forget who I am. I know what I saw, David said firmly. The bruise doesn't lie. No, I replied, my voice breaking, but your son does, and one day you'll realize that, but it will be too late. As I walked out the door, I glanced back and saw Leo in the hallway, a small, satisfied smirk playing on his lips now that his father couldn't see him. That look confirmed everything. Driving to Maya's apartment, I called David over and over, but my calls went straight to voicemail. I sent text after text, begging him to look at the evidence, to question why Leo would call him instead of the police if he'd truly been assaulted, to remember our years together. All of them went unanswered. When I got to Maya's, she took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. Whatever happened, we'll figure it out, she promised, as I finally collapsed into sobs. That night, lying in her guest bed, I felt like my world had been ripped away. The home I'd built, the man I loved, the life I'd poured my heart into, all gone. Because of a teenager's lies and a husband who chose to believe the worst of me without a moment of hesitation. When David's parents arrived the next morning to comfort their son and grandson, Leo's victory was complete. He had successfully ejected me from the family and painted me as the villain. But what none of them realized was that, in pushing me out, they had also set me free. And in the weeks to come, that freedom would give me the clarity and strength to fight back in a way none of them could have ever anticipated. The first night at Maya's apartment was a blur of tears, anger, and utter disbelief, but by morning, something inside me had started to shift. The initial shock began to recede, replaced by a quiet, simmering determination. You need a lawyer, Maya said over coffee, watching me check my phone for messages from David that never came. This is beyond a misunderstanding. He threw you out of your home based on a lie. I nodded slowly, the stark reality of the situation finally sinking in. You're right. I need to protect myself. That afternoon, Maya connected me with her cousin, Eleanor Vance, one of the best divorce attorneys in the city. I had flinched at the word divorce, still clinging to a sliver of hope that David would come to his senses. But Eleanor's blunt assessment during our first meeting shattered that illusion. Based on what you've told me, your husband has shown you exactly where his loyalties lie, she said, her sharp eyes studying me across her polished desk. The question isn't whether you can save this marriage, but how you can protect yourself as you exit it. Under Eleanor's guidance, I began to meticulously document everything. I created a detailed timeline of Leo's escalating behavior, noting every missing item, every argument, and every time David had sided with his son. Eleanor also advised me to conduct a thorough review of our finances. Men who make impulsive emotional decisions often make impulsive financial ones, she warned. She was right. When I logged into our online banking, I discovered that David had already moved $20,000 from our joint savings into his personal account the very morning after he kicked me out. The betrayal stung, but it also solidified my resolve. With Eleanor's help, I started gathering evidence. I reached out to our neighbors, the Hendersons, whose security cameras partially covered our driveway. They provided footage showing Leo's friends leaving our house that evening, clearly intoxicated, but with no signs of the chaos Leo had described. More importantly, the video's timestamp proved I couldn't have been alone with Leo for more than 8 minutes before I called Maya, hardly enough time for the violent confrontation he'd fabricated. Eleanor also helped me secure my finances, rerouting my direct deposits to a new personal account and documenting every investment and major purchase I had contributed to during our marriage. I had paid for our entire kitchen renovation with inheritance money from my grandmother. I had receipts for furniture, for landscaping, for everything I had poured into David's house to make it our home. Then came the smoking gun. Through social media, we found a post Leo had made in a private group, which one of his friends screenshotted and sent to me. Finally got the evil stepmom out of the picture. Dad fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. The casual cruelty was breathtaking, but it was also undeniable proof of his deception. While I was building my case, David maintained his silence. The only communication came through Eleanor, who received a curt email from him stating I could arrange a time to collect more of my things while he and Leo were out. 3 weeks passed in this strange limbo. I kept going to work, and my boss, who was incredibly understanding, gave me the flexibility I needed. Maya's guest room became my base of operations. My sister Hannah flew in from out of state to support me. Her presence a powerful reminder that I still had family who believed in me without question. With Hannah and Maya flanking me like bodyguards, I returned to the house that Saturday to gather more of my belongings. Walking through the home I had made felt surreal. Pictures of our wedding still hung on the walls. My cookbooks still lined the kitchen shelves. Yet here I was, an intruder, allotted a 2-hour window to reclaim my life in pieces. Hannah found me sitting on the edge of our bed, holding a framed photo of David and me from our anniversary trip. "This isn't the end of your story, Chloe," she said gently. "This is just the end of a chapter. The next one is going to be so much better, because you'll be free from people who don't deserve you." Her words planted a seed of a new perspective. Maybe this wasn't a tragedy. Maybe it was an opportunity. As the 3-week mark approached, I went through a transformation that mirrored my internal shift. I cut my long hair into a sleek, modern bob that made me feel lighter. I started a kickboxing class, channeling my hurt and anger into physical strength. I began reconnecting with old friends, realizing in retrospect how David had subtly isolated me over the years, always finding reasons why certain friendships were too much drama. On the exact 3-week anniversary of the night David threw me out, my phone rang. It was him. I stared at the screen for a moment, my heart pounding, before answering with a calm hello that hid the storm inside me. "Chloe," David said, his voice attempting a casual tone. "I think it's time we talked." "About what, David?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral, just as Eleanor had coached me. "About what happened, about our marriage, about whether you've had time to reflect on your actions and are ready to discuss coming home." The sheer audacity of his assumption left me speechless. When I found my voice, it was steady. "Yes, I think we should talk," I agreed, "in person. Tomorrow at 1 at the Camellia." I named an upscale restaurant downtown, public enough to prevent a scene. "That works," he said, clearly relieved. "I'll see you then." After hanging up, I called Eleanor. "He wants me to come back," I explained. "He thinks I'm going to apologize." "Perfect," Eleanor said, a smile in her voice. "Then he won't see what's coming. I'll have the papers ready for you in the morning." That night, I mentally rehearsed what I would say. By morning, a strange sense of calm had settled over me. Hannah helped me pick out a tailored navy dress that screamed confidence. As she zipped it up, she squeezed my shoulders. "Remember who you are," she said. "Not who he thinks you are, who you actually are." With those words as my armor, I picked up the manila envelope from Eleanor's office and headed to the restaurant, ready to close this chapter of my life and start a new one, entirely on my own terms. The Camellia was buzzing with the lunch crowd when I arrived 5 minutes early. I'd chosen this place deliberately. It was a spot I loved that David had always found too fussy. Being here was a small act of reclaiming myself. I asked for a quiet corner table. David arrived at exactly 1 o'clock, ever punctual. He looked tired, with new lines etched around his eyes. A small, petty part of me felt a flicker of satisfaction. "Chloe," he said, leaning in as if to kiss my cheek before awkwardly sliding into the seat opposite me. "You look different. Good different." "Thank you," I replied coolly. We ordered drinks, a scotch for him, sparkling water for me. As the waiter left, David leaned forward. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Chloe. Family is important, and I think we owe it to ourselves to work through this." His words were calm and reasonable, but they showed he still didn't get it. "I've been thinking too," I said, "about loyalty and trust, about what makes a marriage work." "Exactly," he nodded eagerly. "It requires patience and understanding from everyone." "No, David," I said firmly. "What it requires is trust. And you showed me exactly how much you trust me when you chose to believe Leo's lies without a single question." His expression darkened. "Chloe, I saw the bruise with my own eyes. What was I supposed to think? You were supposed to think that your wife of 8 years, who has never shown an ounce of violence, might be telling the truth." I shot back, my voice steady. "You were supposed to consider that your 18-year-old son, who has been openly hostile toward me for months, might be lying." "That's a serious accusation," he started. "I was your wife," I corrected, emphasizing the past tense. His eyes widened. "Are you saying—" I reached into my purse, pulled out the manila envelope Eleanor had prepared, and placed it on the table between us. "I'm filing for divorce." He just stared at the envelope, then let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "You can't be serious. This is a massive overreaction." "An overreaction?" I repeated, incredulous. "You threw me out of my home based on a lie. You cut off all communication for 3 weeks. You moved $20,000 from our joint account. That's not a misunderstanding, David. That is a fundamental breach of trust." His phone buzzed on the table. Leo's name flashed on the screen, but he ignored it. "Chloe, I admit I reacted strongly, but seeing Leo so upset—" "Let me show you something," I interrupted, pulling out my phone. I showed him the security footage from the Hendersons' house, the timestamps proving my timeline. Then I showed him the screenshot of Leo's post. Does that sound like a victim or someone who orchestrated the whole thing? David's face went pale as he read the words. This could be taken out of context," he stammered weakly. And this, I continued, pulling out printed statements from two of Leo's friends who had been at the party, both testifying that I had simply asked them to leave and had never touched Leo. His phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. He silenced it, his face troubled. "Why are you showing me all of this?" he asked. "Because I want you to know exactly what you threw away," I said calmly. "I want you to understand that this divorce isn't an emotional reaction. It's a calculated decision based on your actions and your son's manipulation." His demeanor crumbled, desperation replacing his confidence. "Chloe, please. We can fix this. Counseling, whatever it takes. Now that I see this..." "Now?" I cut him off. "Why not 3 weeks ago, David? Why did you automatically assume the worst of me?" He had no answer. "The divorce papers outline my terms," I continued, pushing the envelope toward him. "I've documented every financial contribution I made to our home. Eleanor has calculated a fair division of assets." He stared at the envelope. "You already have a lawyer." "I had a lawyer the day after you threw me out," I confirmed. His phone buzzed again, and this time he glanced at it. Annoyed. Leo keeps calling. "Maybe he senses his plan is unraveling," I suggested. He hesitated, then answered, "Leo, I can't talk right now." I could hear Leo's agitated voice even from across the table. David's expression shifted from annoyed to alarmed. "Calm down. What do you mean she has evidence? What post?" He glanced at me, realization dawning. "I'll be home soon. We'll talk when I get there." He hung up, looking at me with new, horrified understanding. "He knows. I imagine one of his friends told him they spoke to my lawyer," I said. "The truth has a way of coming out." He looked utterly broken. "I made a terrible mistake," he whispered. "Yes, you did," I agreed, without malice. "And now we both have to live with the consequences." He reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. "Chloe, please, give me another chance. Now that I know what really happened..." "It's not just about that night," I explained. "It's about you consistently choosing him over me, dismissing my concerns, letting him undermine me. That night was just the final act." His phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it, his face tightening. "Leo is saying you're lying, that you faked the evidence." "Of course he is," I said with a sad smile. "And 3 weeks ago you would have believed him. Do you still?" The question hung in the air. After a long moment, he shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think I do." "What happens now?" he asked. "Now you take these papers to your lawyer," I said. "You can fight me and drag this out, or you can accept the reasonable terms I've proposed, and we can both move on." He finally took the envelope, his hands trembling. "And us? Is there any chance?" "No, David," I said gently but firmly. "That ended the moment you told me to get out of our home. Some things can't be undone." He nodded, looking utterly defeated. "I need to go deal with this, with him." "Good luck," I said sincerely. "He needs real help, not a free pass." As he stood to leave, he paused. "You seem different, stronger." "I am," I agreed. "It turns out having your life torched can be very clarifying." After he left, I stayed and ordered lunch and a glass of wine, a quiet celebration of reclaiming my life. I felt a distant sadness for the man I once loved, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of liberation. For the first time in years, I was making a choice just for me. And as I savored a rich chocolate dessert I would never have ordered with him, I realized that sometimes the end of one story is just the necessary, painful, and beautiful beginning of a much better one. 6 months can change everything. Standing at the window of my new apartment, watching the sunset over the city, I barely recognized the woman I had been. My new place was smaller than the house I'd shared with David, but it was entirely mine, decorated exactly to my taste. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier with surprising speed. David, consumed by guilt, had agreed to most of Eleanor's terms without a fight. The financial settlement was fair, allowing me to buy this apartment and feel secure. but no amount of money could compensate for the emotional toll. That healing was a slower, more personal journey. I learned from mutual friends what happened when David got home that day. Leo, confronted with the evidence, had launched into a furious denial that quickly spiraled into an accidental confession, confirming he had orchestrated the entire thing. The revelation had forced a painful reckoning between father and son. Leo's behavior reportedly worsened, his grades plummeted, he was suspended from school, and the image of the perfect son shattered completely. David had finally insisted on therapy. My own focus and determination at work had earned me a promotion to senior director. My sister, Hannah, seeing me flourish, decided to relocate and now lives just 10 minutes away. Maya and I have a standing Sunday brunch date, and therapy with my own wonderful doctor helped me rebuild the confidence that had been so systematically eroded. Gaslighting leaves deep scars, she told me. Rebuilding your trust in your own perception takes time. 4 months after the divorce, I ran into David at a coffee shop. The encounter was unexpectedly calm. He looked diminished, older. "Chloe," he said, "you look wonderful." "Thanks," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice was. "How are you?" "Managing," he said with a tired smile. "Leo's in therapy. It's long overdue." We chatted for a few more minutes before he hesitated, then said with raw honesty, "I made the biggest mistake of my life that night. I know sorry doesn't fix it, but I am. I should have trusted you." "Thank you for saying that," I said, and I meant it. His apology, while not necessary for my healing, was a final period at the end of a long, painful sentence. "Are you happy?" he asked. "I am," I replied truthfully. I found myself again. That new self even included a tentative new relationship. Daniel was a client I'd worked with, and our connection had grown slowly, cautiously. "What I admire most about you," he told me one evening, "is your resilience. You took something that could have destroyed you and used it to grow." He saw me not as a victim, but as a survivor. I have no interest in forgiving Leo, not yet, but I'm working on releasing the anger for my own peace of mind. 6 months after leaving my home with a single suitcase, I hosted a housewarming party. Surrounded by Hannah, Maya, and new friends, I felt a deep contentment. To new beginnings, Hannah toasted, and to my amazing sister, who showed us all how to rise from the ashes. As our glasses clinked, I reflected on the path that had led me here. The betrayal that felt like the end of the world had actually been the beginning of a truer life. In losing what I thought I needed, I found what I truly deserved: self-respect, genuine love, and the freedom to be myself without apology. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, I hope my story gives you hope. The end of one chapter is just the beginning of the next, and you are the one holding the pen. Have you ever had to rebuild your life from scratch? Let me know in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it. Thank you for listening. And remember, your worth is never determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to rise. End of story.